start by introducing Everyday Democracy. Everyday Democracy is a national nonprofit, and we're a nonpartisan organization. We're working to strengthen democracy by making authentic engagement and public participation a permanent part of the way that we work as a country. We've been doing this work for over 25 years, the work in community engagement, and we've worked in over 600 communities across the country on a variety of different issues. For example, on racism, poverty, community police relations, education. And we do this work by providing coaching and training to different communities to help them move from dialogue to collective action and change. So these are our guiding principles. They guide the way that we do our work. At the center is building relationships, and we believe that building relationships is a key part of building collective power and moving to problem solving and action. We also believe that voice is extremely important and that everyone in the community should be able to have equal voice, and that each person's voice is valued, especially those who are most marginalized. We also do our work through an equity lens, and so we do our work that way, and we also support communities to use an equity lens in every phase of their work, building practices of inclusion and thinking about how every decision will impact those who are most affected by the issue. And we put a specific emphasis on racial and intergenerational equity in our work. And lastly, power. And so within power, both building community power, but also helping people and communities learn how to share power as they do their work and share power across the community. So Everyday Democracy's approach to community change is collective power, building collective power, dialogue to action and change. So moving from just dialogue, productive dialogue, to actually taking action as a community and making that action and change sustainable, and then doing the work through a racial and intergenerational equity lens. So when we talk about intergenerational equity, this is our working definition as of now. Intergenerational equity is the practice of treating everyone justly regardless of age and considering the structural factors that privilege some age groups over others. We do this by building strong relationships and partnerships, sharing power across generations, creating mentorship and cross-generational learning opportunities, and making space for youth voice. So we're very excited to learn more about intergenerational equity through the lens of the work that Families United for Education is doing in Albuquerque. And I wanted to thank you again for being with us. We have Omkulthoom, Qassem, Corrina, Roche, and Tony Watkins. And Families United for Education is a decentralized, self-organized network of approximately 500 families in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And they formed in response to growth gaps in educational outcomes between white students and students of color. Most recently, FWE, that's also how they call themselves, successfully advocated for ethnic studies to be included in the Albuquerque Public Schools academic master plan, and they organized anti-racism trainings for ethnic studies teachers, new board members, and Albuquerque Public School administrators. They've also built an intentionally intergenerational network. So we're excited to learn from them and hear them talk about their successes and challenges. And after they speak on their work, we'll have some time for questions. So as they're speaking, if you'd like to type your questions into the chat box, we'll collect those questions and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So, and if we're not able to get to them, we'll follow up with you as well. So thank you all again for being with us. And I'll pass this over to Families United for Education.
Hey everyone, it's an honor really to be here, and really excited to be talking to you all today about the work that we're doing with Families United for Education. This is Omkulthoom, Qassem, and we're just going to do some brief introductions. I work with Families United for Education through the Community Engagement Center. So the Community Engagement Center employs college-age youth. So I'm a master's student right now, But through them, I have the opportunity to work with Families United for Education. I've done some facilitation work. I've helped a lot with the organizing pieces, helping with this webinar. So it's really an honor to be here. Some things that I do for fun. So I do traditional Kung Fu on my spare time. It's my hobby. It's kind of interesting doing that and also being a student at the same time, but it's really great. And Corrina?
Yeah. So my name is Corrina Roche. I also work for the Community Engagement Center. I have a passion for public education and working with students. I'm currently a dance major at the University of New Mexico, and something I do for fun is thinking about dance through a critical lens, as well as education.
Hi everybody, my name is Tony Watkins. I go back with Fue quite a ways, it's just an honor to be here. I was part of the convening in Connecticut recently on the Intergenerational Equity convening, and just met some great people, inspiring people. It's great to reconnect with them and everybody else out there. Something about me, I play music in a local band, and I like baseball a lot. So I do a lot of like baseball history stuff, particularly around equity and the history of racism in baseball. So that's one of my passions.
And although we're the three here representing Families United for Education, we definitely want to say that our voices are not representative of the entire organization, and that we just kind of step up and step down as we can. And which comes to our first point as discussing what intergenerational equity means to Families United for Education. And it really centralizes around including youth in conversations surrounding public education, as they are the main individuals who are influenced by our public education system. We want to be sure that their voices are present in this decision-making process, how we're approaching policy, and how we're approaching change for our community and our public schooling system. Another one is allowing leadership for youth and elders. Elders also have a lot of wisdom to offer for our communities, and also have that which we can be incorporating into our schooling system and acknowledging our indigenous wisdom, as well as bringing the youth and that fresh new voice into the room as well. Creating a space for collaboration and mentorship amongst youth and elders. And so we really want it. We have the doors open. Whoever has the opportunity to step in and get some good work done, that's where they'll come in, regardless of your age, regardless of what school you go to. If you're in a charter school, we still welcome those individuals to our space.
And we also value acknowledging and appreciating the stories and backgrounds of everyone who participates in Fue, learning from each other and listening to criticism from all of our members. So part of being accountable to our members is appreciating who they are, giving a space to uplift people's stories and backgrounds, and then also listening to criticism so that we can continue to grow. So passing the Undoing Racism baton. So one of our mentors, Karen Katira, always talks about how, when you're fighting for things like educational justice and racial justice, that you're not in the fight to necessarily end race, but you're simply passing, or not simply, but passing on the baton. So we like to look at Fue in that way, in the sense that, especially the intergenerational equity aspect of, our older mentors passing on the baton to us, and then looking at ourselves as leaders so that we can then pass on the baton to someone else. So looking at it as an ongoing fight, really.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different roots in Fue, and you can see the background picture. It's a root system that's actually above ground, and they're all connected. We all kind of entered Fue from our different respective histories and contexts and stuff. My own one was fighting a U.S. history textbook at my daughter's high school. It was a textbook that glorified colonization and minimized the harm done by slavery and colonization. It marginalized the voices of people of color, of young people, of women, of LGBTQ people, people with disabilities, and literally marginalized them in the back of chapters in different colored paper. So I bought that book, and that's where I met Vernon Butler. He was also a parent, African American parent at Highland, and that's how we connected. From there, there were two community schools projects that some of the early members of Fue were involved in at two of our most diverse high schools. So Vernon was at Highland High School, I was a parent at Highland, and then I became the point person from the school district to roll out a grant at Highland High School and at Albuquerque High And we spent a year hearing voices from the community about like what they wanted in terms of making their school more responsive to the community, and through focus groups and community forums and individual interviews and so forth. And at one school, there'd be racial violence that would erupt every couple of years at the school, and the response from the school and the district was typically to increase police presence and that kind of thing. And so what we really wanted there, and there's also issues of like the answering machine not being in multiple languages, students and families not seeing themselves reflected in the curriculum, things like that. So we thought it would be good to have anti-racism training for the school and for the community. So that was the one school. At the other school, we wanted to turn the underutilized family center into a drop back in center for youth who had been pushed out or suspended and expelled. And with that, we partnered with a local organization from the South Valley called La Placita Institute. And we were moving forward with that, but then there was a change of leadership at one school, and at the other school for the anti-racism training, we organized the training, but no one from the school came. So community members came, but no one from the school came. And so from there, we brought those two groups together and started advocating with the funding source about how the projects that we had developed was not being executed. So that started Advocates for Equity, and the Advocates for Equity later kind of morphed into Family Center for Education, and that was prompted really by a group called the Latino Education Task Force, and they were advocating for a new family engagement policy in our school district. And so that led to everyday democracy dialogues, actually, at two of our schools that formed the first research that was really a bottom-up effort to create a family engagement policy for the school district, really from the experiences of the families. And that led to more focus groups, community forums, all that kind of thing. And then all that information was loaded into an ethnographic research tool called Atlas TI. It was coded into categories, given back to families. Families would write, we'd edit, write some more, edit some more, pay attention to whose voices were not at the table, invite them in, hear their voices, incorporate that. And then ultimately advocating for the passage of that policy by the APS school board. So really, it was, in the end, it was about developing a public narrative and then really actively advocating for the policy at board meetings. So this is an oldie here. We dug this up. This was a kind of a vision mission statement that Advocates for Equity came up with when we were in the middle of organizing around those two community schools projects. I'm just going to read the mission because I really like it. And this was about 8 or 9 of us that wrote this back in like 2008. It says, "We the people hold these truths to be self-evident. Institutionalized racism is core to the inequities that manifest across all sectors in these United States. This is historically and currently evidenced by racial disparities in access to resources, opportunities, and outcomes across institutions. We acknowledge the compounding impact of other isms in maintaining disparities. Within a capitalist framework, other dehumanizing forces, such as, but not limited to, classism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, and ageism, work hand in hand with a meritocratic ideology to maintain unearned privilege in the hands of a few. Therefore, we commit to unraveling systemic racism in education and other sectors of society as a first step toward creating a more just and equitable existence for all." And we just want to send out respect to all the people that came before us. We don't claim to have started anything. We're just continuing on a legacy of resistance and struggle that goes way, way back and in New Mexico and beyond. And I'll just give one little anecdote to that. One of the things, as a white person growing up in New Mexico, there's all this history unfolding around me that I had no idea about, that I've had to learn like in my 40s and 50s. So we're trying to change that for our young people. But recently we got into a department of the school district to do anti-racism training with their department. And Joaquin Lujan was gracious enough to attend, and he was one of the Black Berets. He was a Black Beret in Albuquerque that was advocating for racial justice back in the early 70s, late 60s. So we just want to honor people like Joaquin and many, many others.
And we also wanted to know about this photo is that the roots are actually growing under the cement and really breaking up. And if we feel that it's really symbolic, it actually is a photo that Tony took, and he saw that the roots are at the same time where we're coming from, and the power of community in pushing up and unearthing systemic racism, which would be that cement and sidewalk. So we really wanted to bring light to that metaphor. And so who we are is Families United for Education, and so we came from Advocates for Equity, but we're a collective that was started as a way for families, community members, and students to advocate for a public schooling system that reflects the values of our communities. And so within that, some of our goals include fostering safe and welcoming environments, strengthening relationships with capacity with families, expanding communication between families, community departments, and schools, and cultivating equitable and effective systems. And I believe there is one more that's not listed right here, but it's that we have representation of our communities within our curriculum.
So the language there is actually utilizing the histories and cultures of our families as a foundation for education. Mm-hmm. And so these are actually the elements of the policy that emerge from our stories and our connections to each other. And we said from the very beginning that if the policy passed, our work will have just begun, because we're not going to stop organizing and advocating until the experiences of our children change in classrooms. Mm-hmm. So our model is really very simple. It's just community organizing plus anti-racism education.
Mm-hmm. And our model, we always really want to think about who's not at the table. And this is a question that we ask at every single meeting and every single connection. Even now we're asking it as we're making this presentation, is whose voice is not at the table, and to invite them and kind of bring them in. And so we did that, and you'll see a little bit later. We did a survey when we were asked to do this presentation about what worked and what didn't work in intergenerational equity, and have their voices there. So you'll see them a bit later, but we also want to model the elements of the policy with one another. So although we have this policy and we really want to make sure it happens and hold people equitable to executing that in schools, we want to do that with one another. We don't want to be treating each other poorly. We want to really be upholding where we come from and all of the experience along with that. Sharing an analysis of the root causes of inequities is another really important one, and that comes back to the anti-racism organizing, that we really want to be focusing on root causes and not the symptoms of that. And so we don't want to just be treating symptoms, we want to be going to the root and seeing where it's beginning and then addressing that. Furthermore, building institutional support without becoming institutionalized. And this is something that's really hard, especially in the decentralized organization, and we'll explain more about that later, it being a challenge. But it's something that we really want to keep reiterating in our organization, to strive to build institutional support without that institutionalization. Creating leadership opportunities for all who are interested. So like we said earlier, the door is always open to anyone who can step up. And like one of our original members, Han, mentioned, we all are kind of on a boat, and when you can get on the boat and you have that capacity, you get in and you paddle like there's no tomorrow. You work hard. And then as soon as you can't have that capacity, because we all have, things happening in our lives, you tell everyone that you have to step off the boat for some time. And that gives the opportunity for other people to also step up and take those leadership roles and paddle like there's no tomorrow. So another thing is that praxis. So in the process of doing community action, we're also constantly learning, and vice versa, and keeping that going, and always being in an open-minded setting where we're thinking that we're gaining knowledge from community while also utilizing knowledge that we gain from community to make our education system better for everyone. And coming back to Han's metaphor, keep paddling for forever. And so we have this nice little image here just to kind of show us all on the boat. It's not us, but it looks really nice.
So here's the family engagement policy that came out. It took about 4 years of organizing and advocacy. We started out within the system, the policy development process that the district provided us. It's about an 18-step process. We got to about step 8 or 9, and it began to bog down. So we started meeting more in the community and advocating at board meetings and writing letters to the editor. And so this policy came from our stories, and the central parts, in my mind anyway, are highlighted in green. In red. The that APS shall strive to utilize the histories and cultures of our families and communities and students as a foundation for education, and that it be equitable. And equitable means putting your resources where the need is the greatest. And it really sprung from hearing from bringing people together from all over the school district. It's a very large school district. And the experiences of families was radically different just based on where their kids went to school. You know, it was just really clear that it wasn't fair. It wasn't equitable. So that was one of the biggest elements of the data gathering process that led to the policy. And then you can read the other elements there. So, you know, when we started, when we were doing this, we thought, well, do we need, you know, maybe we should write a value statement, maybe we should do a mission statement, and then we realized, well, this is our value statement. The value statement is our policy because the policy came from our stories. So we just try to walk our talk. We try to embrace these elements with each other in our meetings, and then of course advocate for them in our school district.
And so we collaborate with over 40 organizations in the Albuquerque community and nationwide. And amongst those organizations, one of them is Everyday Democracy and the support they gave us with study circles and many other forms of support. We've also collaborated with a number of organizations in Albuquerque focused around indigenous rights. We've done a lot with, there's a school here called NACA, the Native American Community Academy, and they focus really on that Native American authentic schooling experience and trying to push back on the really horrible history of, can you all hear me? Good, okay, I think we had a disconnect right there for a second, but NACA is really focusing on pushing back on that history of boarding schools in New Mexico, even Albuquerque specifically. And there are many other organizations with youth and with community advocacy and rights that we all collaborate with and are part of our network. And so we just really wanted to give honor to those organizations and all the work they have done to support us and vice versa.
And NACA's one that we've kind of admired from afar in a way. I mean, they're really a community school focused on health and community service and wellness and indigenous culture and history, but we're very excited because they offered to host our next meeting. So we're gonna actually meet at NACA and learn more about NACA on Saturday. So
this upcoming Saturday, our next meeting, and that's another one of the things that has really worked and also made things difficult for us is that we meet at tons over, I think we've met at over 50 different community locations. And it's been amazing, but at the same time, it's kind of hard not to have a centralized location. And so that's one of the things that we're always negotiating.
So talking about power shift, one of our strategies is that every 2 years we convene at candidate forums for APS board elections and ask each candidate, if elected, will you go through an anti-racism training? And so we then organize the trainings for them, but part of this process is really one, getting people to these board meetings that it's, you know, a lot of people don't know about the board meetings. A lot of people don't know that you can actually vote for your APS or public school board in your public school board elections. So really getting people and families there who are affected by the decisions that these people make is really critical, and also holding APS board members accountable. So are you willing to hold yourself accountable to families and community? And I think it really changes the perspective of the people who are on the APS board, and we've seen a really big power shift over time.
So here's the power shift. So the left axis is kind of like institutional power. So those that have, so the board members are on the top, and the axis on the bottom is supporters of our agenda on the left and resistors to our agenda on the right. And our agenda, as you can see at the top, is engage communities and students, get policy adopted, accountability, et cetera. On the right, it's no anti-racism. So we did get overt pushback when we started from some board members, not all, but some board members not liking the fact that we were naming racism and actually, saying that we were actually contributing to racism by naming racism. And so that's one of the things we had to kind of overcome. So so you can see that the power when we started was squarely on the right to our opposing agenda. And there were people friends of ours that were saying, why do you keep on pushing? You don't have the votes. You simply don't have the votes. So, but we did keep on pushing. And a few years later, we have this. The power did shift. Going to board meetings helped. The anti-racism trainings for board candidates helped. The community forums for elections, all that really helped shift the power to our side. And now we actually have one of our founding members, Candelaria Patterson, as a board member. So it's been great. And now Candy's actually opening doors for us in new ways as the chair of the Equity and Engagement Committee of the APS board. So we're all going to go to that on November 29th, and where we're going to hear a report of the status of the Ethnic Studies Initiatives.
And so some of our training partners where we get a lot of our curriculum for doing anti-racism trainings, we have a partner here in the Southwest, the Antiracism Training Institute of the Southwest, also known as ARTI, and they oftentimes will bring the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond to do trainings in Albuquerque for our community. We also have this wonderful bounty of having Kieran Katira here. She's a national trainer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond and the Undoing Racism trainer. And she has inspired a lot and taught many of us to do those trainings. So Corrina and I also do these anti-racism trainings as part of our work with the Community Engagement Center and also in our work with FWE. And it's just been amazing to have that opportunity. And every time you learn something new, even as a trainer, and every time you go, it's always like you gain something else.
And so we're a large group, and like we said, sometimes people are on the boat, sometimes they're not, but we know that, we have a huge network and 20 plus local people of different ages and races as a part of our organization that hold our values close to them while they're engaging in work through their own organizations and communities.
And so we really want to highlight, we had a training in August where we were able to have the opportunity to have a number of board members, school board members, attend the training while many other key players, and we actually had about 20 facilitators at different parts of the training. It was a 2-day training, and we had a lot of youth really there with voices from a number of different organizations. We had Together for Brothers, which is an advocacy group for young men of color, and we also had New Mexico Asian Family Center bring a lot of their youth to do activity with us as well. And we also had Young Women United there, which is also another advocacy group around reproductive justice and women's rights. And they all did an amazing job, and we are really honored to have them with us, and we really want to continue with that model of really trying to bring youth there to teach and not just to be taught.
And just one quick story about that. So this was a big deal for us because we had 40 people RSVP, including many from the superintendent's leadership team and 3 board members. And on the night of the training, on the eve of the training at 3 a.m., I got a text from Kieran, who we mentioned earlier as our mentor and a national trainer with the People's Institute, that she was stranded in Phoenix and wasn't going to be able to make it. And, at 3 a.m., hearing that, I only lost about 10 minutes of sleep because I knew we were going to be okay because so many people stepped up. I mean, truly was over 20 different people taking different parts of the training, bringing their voice from very diverse perspectives, different ages, to different races, different schools. It was just a powerful, powerful experience.
So like we said, we did ask a few of our members to talk about what has worked in making Families United for Education successful. So our decentralized structure, the hierarchical organizational structure of FWE truly facilitates authenticity and promotes integrity, mutual accountability, and genuine engagement within our community. FWE is always open, ready to listen, define a path forward, and act. And hierarchical means that we don't have, like we said, we're decentralized, so we don't have like a power structure within FWE. And additionally, someone said, work guided by love for community, using our 4 principles to guide and focus our action. Most importantly, action fueled by community love and love for our community. And I want to highlight that one because I think when we do have our meetings, we do see that love and passion come out in our members. And even when we're interacting with APS board members who might view this work differently, at the end of the day, we're here because we love our families, we love our students, we love public education, and we're passionate about making that accessible to everyone and making sure that everybody has access to education that reflects their communities, really. And the relationship between members and community that has been built. So what else has worked in making Families United for Education successful? Our intergenerational and multiracial emphasis. So a vision for public schools that encompasses all families, a shared leadership model and individual relationship building, commitment to inclusion and diligent communication, the development of interpersonal relationships among like-minded progressive community members, and working relationships with power holders and gatekeepers with APS. So having that intergenerational and multiracial emphasis has really helped us to create relationships with each other and community. And like I said, we share a passion for education, which, you know, we're excited that this Saturday we're actually going to have one of our general meetings. And I'm looking forward to it because I know I'm going to see people that I care for and that are doing similar work to me. So we kind of have that emphasis of working together.
And for those of you who don't know, APS stands for Albuquerque Public Schools, so we will say APS quite a few times.
And these are actually verbatim statements that Corrina and Omkulthoom generated from a survey that went out to all of our people in FUE. So it's our way to bring their voices into the presentation.
So just as we mentioned earlier, and so now to the challenges. As an organization, especially a decentralized one, we're not without challenges. And so we really want to acknowledge those and be humbled by them. And so one of the biggest ones is maintaining capacity, funding, engagement, and communication. And here are some of the quotes from our members. The same challenges facing any community or action group, maintaining capacity, funding, and communication. FOIA continues to meet these challenges in creative and thoughtful ways. I thought it was really nice that they tried to end on a really positive note. I appreciated that. We do try to be creative and thoughtful in moving forward. Another one is everyone has an outside job, and it's hard to find balance between supporting FOIA and attending meetings and the job that pays the bills, and that's a really big one. And that's one thing that's really awesome about the Community Engagement Center, stepping up to encourage Corrina and I to work with FOIA and try to keep that ball rolling and having us here. But at the same time, we don't want to say that all that power is now ours. We want to make sure that we're bringing other people to the table, and anyone who wants to be there will have the voice and the leadership opportunity. Implementation by public school administration, definitely a big challenge, especially when we're pushing such a quote-unquote radical approach, which we don't see it as really radical. We see it as love and respect for our community. But a lot of the school board does kind of see it as radical, and you see a lot of people playing devil's advocate, and this is something I've experienced going to school board meetings and really pushing for things like, for example, when we did go to ask for the school board to attend the anti-racism training in August, I had some school administrators, well, specifically one, kind of say, oh, you know, it's so noble that you're trying to make people like end racism, and you deserve like a Nobel Peace Prize. And it was very kind of sarcastic and really taking away from the main direction and the whole idea. And then she proceeded to say that, you know, she had something planned that day, even though it was 3 months in advance that we had asked. And, you know, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She might have had something actually planned, but she has a history of being that kind of devil's advocate.
One of the cool things about that, though, is that it ended on a positive. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But actually, another FOIA member was in the audience, and because one of the things that she said was racism has always been here. It's always been with us, and it always will. And somebody spoke up and said, "No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't always been with us. It's an invention. Racism is an invention, and racism came out of colonization and slavery, and there was a time when there was not racism. So that was kind of a cool comeback."
Yeah, definitely. And me and Tony also tried to keep it on a positive note and just being critical and not really letting it be derailed. But it's also a challenge that we have and the emotional labor that goes into it. It was very emotionally exhausting for me.
And there was really, and there's a lot of positive feedback too from other board members. We're very supportive. So it was good. Another sign of our power shift that things are getting better, I think. So anyway. Another
one of our challenges is engaging youth outside of summertime, as students do have a pretty set schedule from about 8 to 3:30 p.m. And also college students, we also have a very interesting and weird schedule. Like I have classes on evenings because I'm a graduate student. And so trying to maintain that relationship and that connection is really difficult outside of the summertime, and trying to find time slots that we can all meet. And that's another one of our challenges, is a consistent meeting time slot. And so we've been really kind of organic in the way we've made our time slots. We just send out a doodle poll and we just go with it. But at the same time, it kind of is it's difficult not having a consistent time and we've considered addressing that in many different ways. Another challenge is our lack of clear direction, transparency, and maintenance of the hierarchical structure and sustainability. And so, like we said earlier, it really is a challenge trying to keep that structure really authentic in being decentralized, because, like I said earlier, as me and Corrina are paid by the Community Engagement Center as FUE organizers, it's hard to kind of make sure that we're not taking the leadership in a lot of the stuff that's going on. And so we really wanted to give respect to this critique, and they said there is no clear set of long-term goals for the organization or delineation of strategies to achieve short-term goals. The organization also lacks structure. Also, the claim has been made that no one isn't any more authoritative than anyone else, yet deference seems to be given to certain people in terms of determining the direction of the organization. Some actions are taken unilaterally in the name of Families United for Education, and the membership is only informed after the fact. In an organization that claims to have a horizontal power structure, transparency is key. Lack of transparency inherently leads to the development of an authoritarian power structure. And Tony does have one note on that he'd like to highlight.
Yeah, I just thought that was really constructive critique, and it speaks to communication largely too. Like, we've struggled sometimes with just communication. Like, we've had this Gmail account for a long time, and people drop off and all that kind of thing, and we have a Facebook page, so that's part of it. But the other part of it is that because of the boat metaphor, people on and off, and because we are a network, and because we have what we believe to be clear values embedded in our policy, people do have agency to act independently. We don't really vote on stuff. People are free to act as long as it sort of aligns with the policy, which is a reflection of our stories. So that's also one of our strengths, because we also believe that any racism acting to address racism is an urgent thing, and so we also want to honor the agency of each of our individuals to act. So that's the other side of that coin, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, we are advocating for authentic and thorough execution of Ethnic Studies Initiative. So holding APS accountable to implementing the Ethnic Studies Initiative, organizing more anti-racism trainings. Actually, the last one we had for the APS board members, there were so many people interested that we are now planning another one for about 40 people who wanted to attend and couldn't, just due to space. We're advocating for rapid response protocol for addressing incidents of racism in our schools.
Yeah, and for that, there was a racist incident at one of our high schools around a photoshopping incident of a Ku Klux Klan hoods on a school class, and it happened only about 2 weeks after our anti-racism training with the hierarchy of APS, and so we want to. So we've got a board meeting we actually shared the Southern Poverty Law Center's rapid response tool for racism in schools, and we deliver that to the superintendent. But we really want to develop a rapid response to racism in our schools, both at the school level and at the district level. And we want to partner with our school district around that and community. And I want to do a shout out to Within Our Lifetime. We're part of a national network called Within Our Lifetime that's developing a rapid response to racism protocol. So we want to lean on you. We need your guidance. We need your help. So, and I know, so we'll be talking hopefully soon.
And then also looking further into, looking to further impact the makeup of the APS Board of Education, so still holding those members accountable, having them be a part of our anti-racism trainings. And then we're also working on developing or advocating for developing a social justice seal, meaning that students who are in high school could have the option of taking ethnic studies classes that would then give them a seal when they graduate, a social justice seal. So just to motivate students and get more students involved in this initiative.
And this is also along the same lines of, and here in New Mexico, we also are partnered with the Learning Alliance. They're doing a lot around alternative evaluation, so trying to shift away from standardized testing. We have the PARC here right now, which is horrible, as you all know. Those of you who do know have experience with the PARC test and how that rolled out. And so we're trying to push for that alternative evaluation, and the social justice seal is one of those ways that we can push it, and really seeing how youth, especially high school youth, are executing what they know about social justice out in community and doing social justice work as organizers And so we're really hopeful to making sure that happens. We do have a bilingual seal here in New Mexico, but we really want to have a social justice seal as well.
So next steps, some of our next steps include working to create greater opportunities for growth for youth participants. So like we said, we've had youth participants, facilitate our most recent anti-racism training, but you know, we want to hold ourselves accountable, and we have not been including youth in making decisions that determine the progress and future of Families United for Education. So we are working on prioritizing including youth perspective, and then also training teachers who intend on teaching ethnic studies. We're starting to develop a network of teachers who are going to be teaching ethnic studies, and then hopefully training them in the near future.
And so we're also partnering with a UNM institution, the Institute for Race and Social Justice, and they're really helping us on the professional development that we're offering for our current ethnic studies teachers as well. We are looking to doing 4 different sessions, and they're partnered with Families United for Education on rolling out those sessions, and they want Families United for Education to really facilitate the first one. And so it's just a matter of finding the funding to do the getting substitutes to be able to pull out the teachers so we can do the professional development. And so that's really exciting as well.
And then also making our work more accessible to educators. So knowing that there are teachers out there who may be interested in teaching ethnic studies, but don't know that we're here and don't have the resources to do so. And then also facilitating workshops on anti-racism for teachers to earn professional development credit. So that's something we'll hopefully be doing through the University of New Mexico. So really stepping in on making, creating professional development for teachers that includes anti-racism education, because we know that teachers want the best for their students. We strongly believe that the teachers in APS are passionate about working with students, but we know that a lot of them don't have the resources to complete anti-racism work with their students. Yeah, and so we're also partnering with the Latin American Iberian Institute that does professional development for teachers, and is actually a way that teachers can earn professional development credit. So that's one of our goals, is to be able to facilitate that for teachers in APS.
And so we're really trying to solidify that relationship right now. It's a very new one, and we're really excited about it. And so to end, we just want to talk about some of our favorite resources that we've utilized. So the Everyday Democracy Study Circles, Unnatural Causes is another one, about really the real effects that racism has on society, because we acknowledge that race is a social construct, but the effects of it are real. We also use Dr. Camara Jones on race and racism and her The Gardener's Tale. Those of you who've heard of it, awesome, but if you don't, I definitely recommend you look it up and listen to it. It's an amazing resource. The HIMAS Principles for Democratic Organizing, Atlas TI, as Tony mentioned, the ethnographic research tool. We had the Chito Institute to come to do the first professional development workshop for our ethnic studies teachers at the end of the summer, right after our anti-racism training. And for those of you who don't know what the Chito Institute is, they came out of what happened in Arizona with the ethnic studies education that was happening in Arizona public schools, and it got shut down through a legal fight. And they moved to California and started up an institute, and they're doing amazing work. You can also contract them to come train in your communities as well. Race Forward videos is another one, teaching tolerance resources, and SMARM Lab from within our lifetime. Just want to thank you all for everything here. I think now we can go back to Malana and really jump on those questions.
And if you're interested, you can also like us on Facebook. Just search Families United for Education. And if you're looking to get in contact, you can also email us at familiesunitedforeducation@gmail.com.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do want to open it up for questions. I just wanted to say an appreciation, and that I think we can all see that Families United for Education is truly modeling this deep engagement, even down to doing this survey with their participants, to with the members, to make sure that they're truly representing the membership even in this presentation. So I wanted to appreciate you all for that, and thank you again. And I think we only have one question at this point from participants. We have a few. Okay, so the first one is from Patricia Flyinghawk. She wanted you to talk a little bit more about what you mean by pushback on the history of boarding schools in New Mexico.
Oh, okay. So boarding schools in New Mexico have a long history of really pulling Native American youth out of their homes and forcing them into boarding schools and really taking out their culture and making them a white man. And so in the work that the Native American Community Academy is doing is just really bringing back the culture, bringing back and revitalizing language, many of the things that were taken away from these people. And not that long ago, I believe it ended, it was like the 1960s, which wasn't very long ago at all. And so we just really want to make sure that we're addressing that racism that happened and bringing the narrative of the authentic narrative of our Indigenous communities back to the forefront and making that the priority. If that answers your question.
Thank you. So one other question we have is, has there been any work with FWAY's anti-racism and or ethnic studies with teacher prep programs at UNM?
So that's kind of what we're wanting to do. Is we know that it's hard for teachers. We know they work really hard. So creating ways that we can actually teach anti-racism and have teachers earn professional development. So that's hopefully what we'll be doing with the Latin American Iberian Institute. So every year teachers have to get a certain amount of professional development credit. And as Families United for Education, we want to be one of those resources that can provide that for teachers.
So not yet, but it's up and coming.
Yes, up and coming.
And Jerry also says congratulations to FWAY on being a finalist for the Leadership in Democracy Award with Everyday Democracy. And for the rest of the people on the call, we announced the finalists yesterday, so those are on our website as well. And Families United for Education is one of the finalists for the Leadership in Democracy Award.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Right. And I have one question for you all. I was wondering if you could speak to any challenges kind of in centering youth leadership. I know you've had youth facilitate some of your meetings, and kind of any challenges in, you know, building the buy-in among the general membership and kind of building those youth-adult partnerships.
I think for working with youth participants specifically, it's making our meetings kind of youth-centered or accessible to youth. So even during our APS board meeting, we realized that, or the anti-racism training with the APS board, we realized that we failed to even tell our youth participants who these APS board members were and what they did. So really thinking about, like, you know, these are young people that are maybe new to this work, and that we really need to prioritize giving them that information. And you know, there's a different, I would say there's even a different culture when you're working with young people around how meetings operate and how trainings go, and, you know, really looking to like lift that up and see what happens.
Yeah, and not on that stream of thought, when we were leading up to the training, it was really intense. So we were originally going to have the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond facilitate, and they canceled, and we scheduled for December, about 2 to 3 weeks before the actual training. So Corrina and I actually really had to jump in there and do the quick, crazy run around, get together 20 facilitators, get everything together. And there were a couple things that were definitely very humbled and also a little bit ashamed that we didn't really communicate that to the youth, and that should have been prioritized. And so in this work, there's a lot of times when we realize that we should be kind of trying to prioritize that mentorship, and also really bringing them into the space and letting them know that they're valued and that we really want them at the forefront. In terms of Corrina and I, we are sometimes considered youth because we're like 22. We're both 22, but it's still, we feel like we're old in comparison. Like, we want to have people who are 15 and like even younger having their voices and having that leadership position. So that's another thing that we're hoping to work on, is have a FWAY youth group, or maybe even start up FWAY chapters in our high schools to really invigorate that base and allow more access to the work that we're doing and allow more voice for them. But it's something that we're always open to new insight, because it's something that we've struggled with. But it's definitely, I'm not sure if Tony has more to add to that,
Yeah, so that's one of the things about FUE is we always know that we can recreate marginalizing oppressive systems even with our own organizing sometimes. So we pay attention, we try to pay attention to that, and we hear critique on that. And one of the marginalized groups was young people originally. So a real turning point for that was, I think it was our second or third forum, Young Women United stepped up and came to our meeting and said, we really want reproductive justice to be part of the board forum, comprehensive sex education and so forth. And one of their members approached me individually. I said, we really haven't talked about that in our FUE meetings, but come to a meeting and pitch it. And they did, and it was unanimous. I mean, we were like, of course that can be part of our forum. Yes, please. And they came, and then some of the SWAP youth came, Selfless Organizing Project, and then I think of the next one of the SWAP youth, Amanda Gallegos, co-facilitated with Emma Sandoval, and she was 14 at that time. So it's one of those examples of how when older people like me, I'm 53, when we step back and listen and trust, things get better, and that's certainly the case with now connecting with Corrina and Omkulthoom is when I step back, things get better.
And if I can give maybe a piece of advice to organizations that are not working with youth and thinking about it, I think one of the best things about working with youth is that they are fearless and honest, and they get the point across. I think I've noticed that as I've stepping more into this adult world, I feel the pressure of sugarcoating how I feel, especially when talking to APS board members. And it was clear that when we had youth at the training, they said what was on their mind, and they said what needed to be said in a very direct way. So I really appreciate that about working with young people. And I mean, if that's something you want to do in your organization, that I would recommend that as the next step for sure.
Great, thank you so much. So we had a comment from Patricia Flying Hawk, who asked the first question about boarding schools. She just responded that in terms of historical trauma, during an in-service at one of the local public schools, a professor from USD said something that stayed with me. "We are not responsible for it, we are responsible to it." Those words have meaning in so many ways. Thank you for your work engaging youth and adults, setting an example, a positive example, in a place that can feel like being stuck in the mud. For those who feel racism and those who are ill with it, keep paddling. And then she just said that she had to sign off. And then we also have a question from Martha McCoy. We are so thrilled to have you all presenting this. Could you say a little bit more about ways you try to bring people into the conversation about race, especially people who may never have thought about racism as an issue that affects everyone? Thank you for all that you do.
So I think one of the best ways is our anti-racism training. So we do end up bringing a lot of people in, and sometimes it works better than others. At that same training, we did have some Albuquerque Police Department officers come to the training, and as you may know, there was a Department of Justice case for our Albuquerque police officers addressing a lot of structural problems, and especially in terms of racism and use of excessive force. And so we brought them into the conversation, and it is a difficult one, and we definitely saw a power struggle there, and it's always kind of a struggle, but really we try to say, especially in my classes, so I'm doing educational thought and sociocultural studies for my master's, and we always say that sometimes it has to be a rude awakening. Sometimes you really have to see that like in a sharp and way that you can't ignore it, for it to be a realization that, you know, racism is real and it's happening and it's affecting people, and we're all in it, we're all complicit in it, and we all are probably creating it. And for those of us who are white, we're complicitly so like benefiting from white supremacy, and you're on that conveyor belt, to use the metaphor that Kamara Jones uses. We're all moving towards it. We're moving towards a place of white supremacy. And if you told people that, they'd be like, well, no way, I want to do it. Even if you're just standing there and not doing anything, you're still moving towards a racist reality. And so in order to really be addressing it, you have to be running in the opposite direction towards an anti-racist reality. So you have to be actively anti-racist, especially if you're a teacher. And that's something that's really difficult, and it's a lot to carry, but it's also really important. Another really important resource for those of you who have seen The Color of Fear by Lehman Wah, it's kind of hard to get a hold of, but Lehman Wah's mindfulness approach, like I think it's mindful communication, and he does a really good way of bringing people to the table and just kind of asking them, so why are you feeling that, or why can't you believe that this person's experience is real? And really trying to get back into that inner psyche of like, where is it coming from? Why are you feeling that? Why can't you relate to it? And then kind of flipping the narrative sometimes. So you'd say, you know, like, what if your daughter, like your white daughter, was told that, you know, she's not going to make it because of these systemic things like pit up against her, and that, you know, it's not my fault that, you know, that's happening to her. If they were told that, then maybe that has to be the step that comes to it. But we all believe here that it's a constant journey. Like, we're not gonna wake up one day and be anti-racist. Like, I'm still struggling with it. And it's many layers. Like, you're struggling with the internalized, you're struggling with the outward, the interpersonal, but also the structural, and that we're all in it. There's no getting out of it. And I really like the metaphor, if you have the opportunity to read Tatum, and she gives a metaphor of racism being a smog in the air. So we're all breathing it in, and we're all being affected by it in our health, but we have to take a collective responsibility for cleaning up that smog. And so those are just a couple resources if you really want to have a better idea of how to bring people into that conversation, and also not sugarcoating it. Kind of like Corrina says, there's a lot of pressure to sugarcoat it and not be forward in the way we're saying it. And it's suffocating. We don't want to do that. So we really just want to encourage that forward and honest conversation and being authentic. So not saying, using I statements, saying, you know, this is my personal experience, something that can't be invalidated, and standing by that.
Great. So thank you again so much for all of your thoughts. And we're going to end here. I just want to encourage everybody on the webinar to follow Families United for Education on Facebook, and you know, follow the work that they're doing. And also, here's our contact information is on the slide here. And if you'd like to visit our website, we have a number of resources and tools. We have some around intergenerational equity, and also, you know, more resources and tools around organizing, facilitation, and moving to action. So thank you again, and thank you all for participating.
Hey, Malana, I just had one more comment. So me and Corrina and I we're working on a website, which we'll be launching soon, hopefully within the next month or so. And so just want to keep an eye out for that. And if possible, if we could share it with Everyday Democracy, if you could post it in announcements that we've launched our website, it's going to be an amazing resource, hopefully. But it's up and coming. So just wanted to say that.
We'll post it on the Facebook page. I think I sent the email to everyone. I'm not sure. So if you have any questions, even follow-up questions about this presentation, please feel free to email us.
Thank you guys so much.
We'll be sending out a follow-up email with the recording of the webinar, and then we'll also send your website link as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.